We have like 30 people here almost. So we'll get started here in just a few minutes. This is Dry Eye Hive. This is actually something I've been working on for about 8 months, getting this together. And it's a little harder when there's no CE because you have to be very thoughtful about the type of education we can deliver. And I think everybody here is here for a reason. You're looking to grow your office without the stipulation of I'm going to get a credit or a bonus. And you're looking to grow a practice, hopefully financially and clinically. So if you're in the chat, there's a few questions if you could answer, just where you're from, what do you want to learn, and your favorite dry eye tool. And these are being recorded, so we'll get this up on a podcast and YouTube later on, and obviously discuss it in some of the forums online afterwards, so don't feel like you're missing out. And this is a 6-week bi-weekly series, so we'll be doing this all the way into January here. So if you miss this one, don't worry, just come back in 2 weeks and come hang out. There's really no agenda here, as you're going to find out. And if you're just joining us, I would love if you guys could turn your cameras on. I love it so much. It's going to be much more interactive if we can see your face. It's okay if you got your pajamas on, you got your curlers, your whiskey, your beer.
I wore a t-shirt just for you guys. I want you guys to be very comfortable.
Yeah.
Maybe one night we can all wear muscle shirts as a joke, and that'd be kind of like the fun, fun thing.
There we go. Now we're getting more people with the cameras on.
Got Gary. He's got his crispy white shirt on. So we're going to get started here. I'm going to give you the rundown, and we're just going to I have some panelists tonight. It's going to evolve throughout the Dry Eye 6-week series of who's on. And one of my goals was, how can we get panelists on here that are non-KOL, who are not financially incentivized to recommend their product? And there's nothing wrong with KOLs. They need to exist in the industry as well as, MSLs and stuff like that. But I want to work with and talk to people in the trenches who are like, this is how I do it. And I was joking with Erin earlier today when we were prepping. I said, Erin, I just had a meeting with this dry eye doctor. I've never heard of her. She has 5 doctors and 3 locations. And Erin's like, yeah, there's tons of these clinics all over the country. They're so silent online, but they have like really great operations. Well, I'm going to do a little introduction. So I'm Perry Brill. I'm the son of an optometrist, and I worked in my dad's office for about 8 years in Kansas City. And it was a really advanced dry eye clinic. I remember when I was working in his office in an administrative role, we had about 10 employees, and we had LipiFlow in 2014 and Tear Lab in 2011 or whenever that was introduced. And so I was kind of there when there wasn't much to offer outside of drugs and some manual expression with your fingers. And right when LipiFlow was rolling out, we got the LipiView 2 and the LipiFlow, and it was like a real energized to our practice, because now we could actually help people. And we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on advertising, which we'll talk about, through website creation and professional video content. And so I really got excited about that part, the business part of Dry Eye. And today I do a lot of media marketing, as you'll see here. I own a staffing agency and do some software development. So that's why we're here. But I'm going to pass the baton on to Peter here, and he's one of our guest panelists tonight, and you can kind of share your short story.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity to talk with everyone here. And hopefully we can have everyone just join in and have a really interactive session here. As Perry already mentioned here, the whole purpose of the Dry Eye Hive here is not to have a top-down discussion of any specific product or any specific procedure, but to ask the whole panel here of what works for someone and what doesn't work, because dry eye is a pretty complex topic here, and what works for one of us may not work for the other, and it helps to have a more nuanced perspective from everyone. So I really appreciate this opportunity here. A little bit about myself. I'm a practicing ophthalmologist out in Houston. I also am the CEO of Ocular, which is the dry eye company here.
Perfect.
Awesome.
So my name is Aaron Evans, and Perry and Peter have asked me, hey, to come on here and just talk a little bit about dry eye. And I come from a private practice setting. I've been in practice for about 12 years. recently got out of seeing patients and now operating over 7 locations. Dr. Ryan Beck, who's on here, is our medical director, as well as one of our co-founders is with me on Dry Eye Rescue, which is why we're here on Dry Eye. A few years ago, Ryan came to me and said he wanted to get into dry eye, and I thought it'd be pretty easy to implement. And I can tell you, it was one of the hardest things we've ever had to do, and we had to really sharpen our pencil. And we, luckily had enough tools. We had our own marketing companies, other things to build a dry eye clinic within our clinics, and it's now evolved to helping other people do that in their clinics, and this is part of that. If we can help raise the bar in dry eye for everyone, I think there's a lot of things I want to learn, and Dr. Beck want to learn from people like Perry said earlier that have these awesome dry eye clinics that have been around for 5-10 years, where we've only been doing it 3-4 years. So we like to learn and interact with you guys, and if we can give you guys any insight to how we do it, and if you guys again can take what you want or not, but we appreciate you joining us. It's East Coast 8:30. It's pretty late, but I think it's still gonna be pretty fun.
Cool. And
Yeah,
Ryan,
great.
why don't you go next?
Sure. So I'm Dr. Ryan Beck. I've been practicing for about 8 years now. I've been working actually with Aaron for just about all of that time in coming through. And also, just kind of similar to Perry, I'm a son of an optometrist, also a brother of one, and a nephew to 2 other ones. So fifth
Wow.
one in the family. Definitely been a family biz and seen a bunch of different practices in different styles and types. Some that were really heavy dry eye, some that weren't. And we tried to incorporate a bunch of things into the practice group that we have. So we also operate 8 practice locations in the South Florida area and employ 11 doctors, all with different styles as well. And getting the doctors and the staff and the things on board was interesting because each location was set up a little bit differently too. So as Dr. Evans said, it was definitely a trial in getting started. I will first admit fault that we got a LipiFlow, and we were one of those offices that had sat in a box in the corner for about 6 months until we actually opened up and started using it. So from going from that into building a system that was able to be transferable in between the offices, it's been a real fun adventure, and happy to share any kind of knowledge of what we're doing every day. I practice 4 days a week myself, and I recently, just as of last week, gave up comprehensive eye exam care because the dry eye aspect of our group just actually took too much over it. And now I am just specifically on dry eye now 4 days a week. And it's been a phenomenal journey.
That's badass. And I hope Aaron and Ryan, maybe I can come down there one day in the next 3 months, and we can kind of show the clinic off that you guys build. It sounds fun.
Absolutely. It's built for that training center, so it's great.
Yeah. Well, we can live stream from there and act like gamers, but we're really just a bunch of nerds.
It's great. We can set up some Call of Duty. We got a bunch of TVs in there too, so it'll be fun.
All right. So if you're just joining here, this is Eye Hive. This is a 6-week series, bi-weekly. There's no CE. Nobody here is paid to present. We're not hawking products, and you're not going to get sales emails afterwards. This is not the purpose. If you want to turn your cameras on, would love it. We got the brave souls. Michelle's looking great. Gary, Ariel, Wendy Ann, David, you guys look awesome. So please turn them on if you can. It's okay if you're on mobile. But so here's kind of the format that's going to go down here. There's no topics really tonight. So we want to hear from you. What do you want to learn? And everyone in here is a master in something. So if you have something to add to the conversation, what I ask you do is just put in, if you want to get on stage to ask a question to one of the 3 experts on here, then just say, put your question in the chat, please. And just, I will create a queue, and then I'll be messaging you to come up on stage, and I'll unmute you. So that is the format. So any burning question clinically, could be super scientific, could be about business, staffing, anything dry eye related. You can put that in the chat, and you'll come on, you'll talk via audio. You don't have to have your camera on to talk, and we'll just kind of shoot the breeze back and forth. So I'm going to
Terry, is everyone able to unmute, or do you have to unmute everyone here?
I think you can unmute. You can unmute, I think.
Oh, okay. That may be even more interactive. If you want to talk, just maybe unmute and just start speaking sometimes, because it looks like everyone is muted right now. And so.
Yeah. So I'm gonna we're gonna do a little role play. So I'll be I'm gonna pretend I'm the doctor, and I have a dry eye clinic of 1 year. Aaron, we'll grill you first. So,
All right.
Aaron, I have this LipiFlow, and honestly, I have 2 boxes of activators, and you know how much those activators are. That's probably what, $5K, and it's sitting in a box on a dusty shelf, maybe more.
Hey, it's not that much. It's not that much. But yeah.
Okay. And I also have 4 amniotic membranes from BioTissue. I thought I'd use, and this IPL unit, which is on delivery. And I'm just really struggling to get people back in for the workup. Because during the routine eye exam, and Ryan, you can pop in on this too. During the routine eye exam, they're complaining of contact lens intolerance. They are complaining of heavy blinking. And I tell them, look, it's not the lenses. The lenses are great today. It's kind of your stupid eye. And, I say it kind of nicely and jokingly. So how would we handle that situation so we can really get these patients back in to value the workup?
Oh, I'm a big fan of technology and the wow factor. It's just kind of the way I've always done things. And so we strongly believe in mybography as almost a screening tool, and so even on our routine exams, even if they're not complaining of anything, even before they see the doctor, we're doing a quick liposcan or some quick mybography scan. And the doc, again, if he starts to hear some symptoms related to probably dry eye and he's running out of time and can't really do everything that day, we used to do it without the mybography, and it was a tough sell. Like, hey, why can't you do it on the same day? Why are you making me come back? You're all about the money, this, that, and the other. Now we just pull up the MyBo images, take a quick look at it. They're seeing something that they've never seen before, almost like an optomap. They've never seen it before, the back of their eye. We say, listen, we think there's something going on there.
You charge for that?
Figure it out. No, we don't charge for the mybography, because it's a screening mybography. It's not the full, the deep,
Okay.
the deep diagnostic version. So just a quick scan of something to talk about. Again, now we do have a cartograph. What we also do, if it's a contact lens patient, we are doing a little bit more for those patients, and Beck can speak to this more, but I know we are doing a screening mybography, and we might do some other dry eye about just a quick test. Again, just to spur the conversation about dry eye, because again, this patient may think it's their contacts. They usually think it's allergies. They think it's something. They don't always just jump to dry eye being that problem. And so, and we also don't want our doctors that are busy to all of a sudden open up a can of worms in that last 5 minutes. So we want them to plant the seed. We might even send them home with something basic, even if it's an eye drop that we sell in the office, just to get them started and say, we'll see you back in a couple of weeks and we'll figure out, the root cause of this. Our big thing is we're a soft sale. We do really well at the IPL and LipiFlows as far as our capture rate, if you want to call it that. Most because we're not pushing it so hard. Again, we present options. We give them good, better, best. We give them different price ranges as far as that goes. But also we spread it out. We don't go from zero, because again, these patients are there to get a pair of glasses. Sometimes they're just routine. They allocated a certain amount of time and money that day, and if you overwhelm them, you're going to scare them off. So we just soft sell, give them something, show them an image, pique their interest a little bit, that there may be something to this, and then we tell them to come on back.
Yeah, and you just mentioned something. I'm going to kind of put on my administrator hat, because I was responsible for revenue. And here you are, you just did a routine eye exam. They came in They came in for contacts or glasses. And now you can potentially destroy the whole patient relationship, because you lost the glasses sale, you lost the contacts. Now you're saying they need $1,500 of dry eye treatment when they had no physical pain, yet they had MGD and other symptoms. So I think you're right. It is a journey, and it may not be a sale now, but maybe in 6 months or a year.
Well,
I'm just curious, is anyone in the group here charging for a dry eye screening at all, or is everyone basically just doing that as part of the evaluation for possible dry eye patients? I'm just curious if anyone in the group is actually charging for dry eye screening here. Anyone?
By screening, do you mean during
like doing a mammography, or doing even a picture, similar to like how a lot of practices charge for the Optos, right? To get the retinal pictures. So I'm curious if anyone is actually doing something similar in dry eye.
I do. I charge $45 for the mammography.
Okay.
Great.
Great.
So
and that was Leanne. Thanks for being our first brave soul here. Really appreciate it. Okay, so walk us through that. So patient comes in, they're on their lousy VSP benefit, sorry. And then what do you do?
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is how I do it. A patient come in. I'm sorry, I look like a mess, so I'm not gonna have my video on.
You
So
sound great.
I see a lot of older patient, meaning like in their 40s and older. So my clientele is mainly
Babies.
older. And 50, 60, 70, 80, 100. And so they have, I see the sign, but sometimes they don't have the symptoms. And so what I do is I would tell them, I tell them, because a lot of these established patients, so I tell the staff that Dr. Griffin wants to go ahead and image your gland, just because as we get older, we're going to have more inflammation, and she just want to see what it looks like. And then because they would ask, what are you doing? You didn't do this before. And so that's what we do. And then they would put it on the screen. So when I come in, it was already there. And sometimes they would play a video to let the patient know about eye health and what are my Bowman glands and what happened when you had inflammation. So we do have a little bit of video to kind of educate the patient before I come in. And then when I come in, I would ask them, what do you have any questions about the video? And I sit down and I discuss that. That's the first thing they want to know. What am I looking at? And then I would kind of go into a little bit. And then I said, let me go ahead and continue your exam because you're here for glasses. So let's do that. And then I would say, okay, and then I give them an option, like kind of like Dr. Evans. I have like simple home option that they can start with, and then come back in a month and I'll check. And then at that 1 month, I'll do more detailed workup.
And what is the home option? Are you doing warm compresses or some type of wipes?
Yes, if I see a lot of time, I see blepharitis with it as well. So I would send home the OcuSoft Plus that they can use to kind of clean up the lids. If the meibomian gland look congested, then I would give them a home treatment. I would recommend warm compress. And I said it may not do a lot, but it's a start. I prescribe omega-3 as well. And sometimes they would accept the option, all of them, and sometimes they don't. And I said, that's okay, because you're not symptomatic, but let's come back in a month and then we can go into the discussion, like further details. And so I would say the capture rate on just starting to do some kind of work on their eyes is about 90%. 10% of my patients just refuse, and I'm okay with that.
So you pre-appoint that person, you schedule them, say, look, we're going to see you a month.
Yes,
Jane
correct.
Here, our tech or receptionist is going to book this right now for you.
That is correct. So everybody require a revisit so I can discuss the details. Because on the red, like you said, they're there for, I always try to address the chief complaint, and they were not there. A lot of these patients live with it all their lives and they thought that's normal. And I tell them it's not normal. It doesn't have to be that way. I do have an IPL, but I never discuss that at the get-go because it overwhelms them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you say it's 90% capture rate or by consent to treatment, is how many people sign up to get the screening though? If you present that to all your patients, is how many people are to do that?
The screening, I would say I don't have all of them signed up. Most of them don't know what it is. I would, once they do them, I would tell them that this is the charge. We just charge them afterward, and they're okay with it. If they fuss, then we take the charge off.
Okay, so you kind of you're automatically doing it, and then at the end you say, hey, listen, the screening was $45, and if they get crazy with it, you say, well, we can waive it this time for you if you want. That
is correct. Kind of like the optos. At the beginning, when we first have optos in 2020, we were kind of like give it optional. But now it's required for everybody. And eventually we'll probably require the mammography, but right now the people just don't understand that enough about dry eye, and they don't think they have dry eye. And so if they opt in, then I do them. If they don't opt in, I still do them, and we still charge if I sit and discuss in detail with them. And sometimes the patient won't want to pay, and I'm okay with that too, because I'm doing a service that is good for them. That's how I look at it. And and if they think that they couldn't afford it, then I would waive it. But most of my patients, they seem to understand the value after I explain it to them. And so they don't really say anything.
No,
But Liam, you bring up
agree.
a great,
Yeah.
Oh, no, I was just saying that Liam brings up an excellent point about having patient be invested in their care. Because they're paying for whatever nominal amount that is. I think you were alluding to the fact that the uptake for treatment is much better with a nominal payment than if it were to be completely all free, in which case sometimes patients' expectation is such that, oh, if it's free, then why do I really need it? If I didn't need it for screening, why would I need this extra treatment as well? And so I'm just curious if people who are doing some sort of fee-based screening are actually getting some better results with the acceptance rate, because it's kind of an additional screening method for patients who are going to be more compliant, because it's the toughest thing clinically is to find patients and they not compliant with whatever we want them to do, so we can be the best of doctors. And if they're not compliant, then it takes away the whole process.
In my father's practice, we charged $75 for myography through the LipiView 2, and we had no pushback. And it wasn't a screening because I'm not a clinician, but my dad obviously self-selected these people for some type of reason. We didn't have pushback. They were suffering. I think a lot of times we don't realize that these patients drove by 10 other practices and they came to you for a reason. You got them held captive. They chose you. So now it's time to take care of them, and you can't feel bad for charging, for little things. And $75 is pretty reasonable, I think.
Yeah, depending on the area as well. And I can speak with this with Dr. Evans. So initially, when we started with our dry eye evaluations, we had actually even had an extra charge for some of the reporting that we did, because we used the Oculus Keratograph 5M and had gotten the crystal tear report as part of that. And it was, an investment, but provided a lot of good information for our patient base. And then initially we saw, yes, those people who were suffering and compliant, yes, they would drive in, didn't care what it was, they would pay it, they were on board, ready to go. But later on, about a year into us doing the testing and evaluations, we realized that we wanted to reach out to more of the patients in the chair who might have mild to moderate symptoms that weren't ready to so invest, but we wanted to capture a little bit of something, like spark their interest. So we started doing just a lower lid myography with either the LipiScan or the keratograph in each of the patients in the exam rooms. And from there, we started to say, look, this is unhealthy a little bit right now, or, if there's a mild case, or we say more of expressing concern. That was one of my favorite words in the exam room when we got started, was I'm concerned that if we don't take care of this now, it can progress down to something a little bit worse later. So that's why I want to bring you back. We'll, do a medical visit, most likely under your medical insurance, as long as we take it, and then draw up a treatment plan for you at that time. And then, I know it's tough to get away from thinking with people's wallets, but if they feel like they're getting the examination taken over by the insurance, they might be more willing to have that extra pocket money go towards these treatments, as long as, it was going to be beneficial for them too.
Yeah, I would just add a little bit to what Lynn was saying is I do think it's pretty interesting. You ask a patient, hey, you want your meibomian glands images? One image, they probably have no idea what you're talking about. So, they're going to say no every time you ask them that question. But if you go ahead and do the technology, just like you want to see your retina, well, I don't know, maybe what the heck's a retina? So I like it. You're doing the myography and you're showing them. And if they're leaning in and they're all excited and you find something and, you're really going after it and they're excited about it, then great. If they're looking at you like, I could care less, this is not for me, and I think, you're just trying to tell me snake oil, then you back up and maybe you don't charge for that. But I think the ones that are wanting, are excited to learn something new about their eyes. And we have several patients that would come back and would say, hey, why are you here today? Like, well, you always got new toys. I always like to come in and see what you can find today. And, and they're excited to learn about their eyes. And I kid with my best friend. He's a dentist, and he takes your teeth out and puts them back in a day kind of guy. But it's easy for him because everyone comes in complaining of pain or irritation or cosmetic. Dry eye, majority of them don't have any complaints, and you have to tell them there's a problem. They don't really even know they have a problem. So I think the imagery, going back, that I think that MyBo screening is a great tool. I think charge for it or not. I think it's good if you can charge for it, great. And I think I don't know why. I guess we may look at, maybe we're going to start charging more for charging something
I think
for that type of.
so. Aaron, you said something interesting. So when Optimap came out, I think my dad had it in like the early 2000s or mid 2000s. He had the big old jalopy dinosaur one.
Oh, yeah,
And
200. Oh yeah.
yeah, it worked great. And so they had a click fee model, and he paid every time he took a picture. So the technician would have to ask the patient, would you like this photo? Yada, yada, yada. Here's why you get it. And the acceptance rate was good, but it wasn't fantastic. And then my dad was talking to him. This is before they're big. They're like, why don't you just let me take unlimited photos? And, they eventually moved to that model. So for Optimap, what he does is he takes a photo on everybody. He doesn't ask them if they want the photo. So then they're like, wow, this is really cool. It seems very high tech. Now they get in the exam room, and then he asks the patient permission. We just took this photo. Do I have your permission to open it? It's this amount of dollars.
Mhm.
And so now, yes, could it be seen as a little shady? Sure. But at least you have asked permission. You have demonstrated that this is some pretty high tech equipment. So just food for thought.
Yeah, and I can tell you the repeat on Optimap is really high. Once people have paid for it or didn't pay for it and got it for free, whatever you did, the repeat is very strong. Same with anti-glare coatings on your glasses. If you said, hey, do you want AR in your glasses? Like, what the heck is that? What's AR? But once they've had it and they see the benefits, they come back and it's an easy repeat. Same on Mybography. I would imagine they're coming back saying, hey, how my Mybo glands looking? Because last year you said they weren't great, and it's kind of something else for them to. I mean, back in more to that, but I think that's what they would probably say.
Absolutely.
And then
And this
it
is
goes
kind of-
without.
sorry.
Yeah, go on, Ryan. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. I know. And one of the things that Aaron just kind of segued just very slightly was that's definitely one of the things my patients ask me coming in, and how are the glands looking today? But I also push on the glands for every person who's in the regular comprehensive exam or did previously. I personally like the Corb MGE, the meibomian gland evaluator, to be able to judge a little bit of function there, as well as doing a little cotton tip applicator to the lid margin to say, hey, is normal function going to be good, as well as is forceful push going to be okay? And then also count the number of glands that are expressing per lid. And then I just chart that real quick. There's the 7 glands per lid, 10 glands per lid, how are they doing for that day? And then there's patients who come back 3, 6, a year later, they say, all right, doc, how many glands I got now? How many glands are working for me after going through this treatment? And it definitely drives it. It's fun.
Ryan, you mentioned something, the Corb MGE. I don't think a lot of people may not know what that means. It's like a little compression spring thing with like, I don't know how much PSI, little tiny PSI.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Finn knows the PSI. He knows exactly the PSI.
Is it like 0.2 or 2? I don't know.
0.3.
0.3.
0.3. Yep.
Well,
Yeah,
it's theoretically supposed to be the exact amount of a normal blink that you can forcefully kind of blink. So again, the idea is if you push on it and nothing comes out, then the majority of the time when the patient's blinking, no oil is probably coming out. Now, it doesn't mean they can't squeeze real hard or push, but that's the idea of the.
And if you need one, just reach out to J&J. I'm sure the local rep can just swing you on or something.
I got some I can get you as well.
But just related to the whole screening there, right? I think one of the easiest screening, of course, is just a questionnaire the minute they walk into the office. As Lynn was mentioning, a lot of patients have just put up with dry eye for decades, and they basically have learned helplessness now, and they don't even talk about it. But even a simple survey, which we wouldn't charge for, obviously, it would basically set up the conversation so you can actually talk about it by reviewing that survey with them. And then that gets the whole conversation going about dry eye in a more granular fashion for the patients, that is more interactive than just saying, oh, by the way, I see a bunch of Demodex, even though you feel nothing.
Yeah. We have a question from Travis Lair here. He wants to know, anyone know where I can buy a meibomian gland expressor easily? I'm assuming there's different types.
Yeah, you can.
What do you guys like?
Yeah, where to buy them? I mean, you can buy them. Almost all the distributors have them. I know Bruder has their own. Oasis Medical has their own. I mean, you name it. They're pretty easy to get. I don't want to self plug, but there's other ways. I don't know. We can email us. We'll get you some places to go.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. Let's move
Which
on.
one do you use?
I wanted to chip in on that. Sorry. So by the meibomian gland expressor, I think I was talking about more the one that was it Johnson & Johnson sells for actually pressing on the glands to get that right PSI, not the actual expression instrument.
Oh yeah, the MGE. Yeah. So it's either Johnson & Johnson Yeah, there's only two places to get it: Johnson & Johnson and Dry Eye Rescue. You can go
Okay.
direct. I'll say they, and not to beat up on J&J, but they because it's a medical device, you have to open up a surgical account with J&J. They make it extremely hard.
wow.
But but you can get it done.
Thank you.
I think they're like $40, I think.
I just put in the link. It's just simple e-commerce thing there. So cool. Really, thanks for the question, Travis. Anybody is welcome to chime in if you're just joining us. What's up, Dr. B? You're more than welcome to unmute yourself. Literally just ask a question. You got a whole 37 people here who are just dying to give you answers.
Dying to give me answers about some sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What you
sorry,
got-
a little late. But I mean, my biggest thing when I start looking at some of this dry eye stuff, and more and more, I want to be doing more zest treatments. I want to be doing more tear care treatments, and I'm really getting to the point where do I want to start putting that as like, hey, this is first line treatment. We're gonna get you started on this stuff just to get them going on it, because I'm like, do I take the route of, yeah, let's go ahead and put you on a course of, Isuvis and some artificial tears, warm compresses, things like that, or are we just going to jump right into this kind of thing? Because I get good responses when we do the procedures, but it's getting to that point where I'm like, I get good responses with covered items that are, under insurance with the drops, stuff like that. So I'm like, hey, how do I get over my own, I guess, personal restrictions on when I think that's useful and beneficial,
Got
That's
it.
great.
Well, I
Who wants to jump on that one? That's a good one.
Yeah, I can jump on that one
Yeah.
because this is kind of what I'm dealing with every day. And the easy answer is there's no easy answer. I apologize about that. Is that every patient is different. If I could give a DISC assessment, if you guys are familiar with that is, and learning about personality types for everybody coming in, I would love to have that on every patient before they walk in the door, so that I could see who was going to be the go-getter and ready to drive into treatment, and then just like, hey, doc, let's do this today and get it done. Or the people that I'm going to have to actually hire somebody just to hold their hand from the entryway into the exam room. It's really feeling out the patient and figuring out how invested are they in jumping on board, not just financially, but in making themselves feel better. How much of this is truly affecting their lives? And when you get to those discussions and saying, well, is this interacting with your day every day, or is this just a once a week thing that you're putting in drops, or, and that starts to help you gauge on where to jump in with treatment. I think anybody who is here and jumps in and somebody comes in with +3 injection 360 around their eyes, and somebody comes in complaining of burning sensation, you're not going to hesitate to be able to throw, a steroid on it and get them calmed down, or whatever your favorite treatment is for those kind of situations. But it's definitely taking it case by case and really connecting with the patient, because when you start asking about them personally, you're generating that doctor-patient relationship, which is going to breed that long-term, dry eye journey as time goes through. In that sense as well, Dr. Evans started to mention before, we've set up like a mild, moderate, and severe level of treatment plans for each of the different main diagnoses that go along with dry eye. And by already having that readily available, it was like, either way, I just got to grab the mild sheet, and this is what we got to do. Moderate sheet, here we go. Severe sheet, here we go. And then talk to the patient through the options on each of those type of treatment plans and go from there.
Are you basing that more on then like a speed score or a diagnostic? Because I mean, you obviously see the pain without stain type patients, because obviously sometimes what we see doesn't match up with their symptoms.
It's true. And so the symptoms that go there, I think the imaging, like we've talked about before, goes a long way. So during our dry eye evaluations, we're actually doing interior segment photography, both with sodium fluorescein staining as well as lissamine green. We're doing tear breakup time videos that go along with it, as well as mybography and looking in it. And when you can physically show the patient that there's this keratinized biofilm with a bunch of Demodex mites just hanging out all over the front surface of their face, and that there's a need for that zest treatment to be done pretty much immediately to get started, then it's an easy kind of push to the patient. I don't want to call it a sell, because it's really a prescription treatment that we're prescribing for them, but that's that kind of issue. So I would say the imaging goes a long way. The symptoms obviously play a role, but I think that the education and the imaging is probably more driving factor than just the OSDI or the speed score.
I'd like to speak a little bit to that. Is that we do bring patients back for a full comprehensive dry eye evaluation that is every bit of an hour long, and we charge, I think, $300 for that. If we can bill, we bill the parts that we can for that. But we used to try to squeeze it into 20 minutes, 30 minutes, maybe squeeze it into an exam, and it wasn't enough information to get the patient to really buy in or consent to the treatment option, especially the more and I'll say invasive, the more complex treatment. So, again, we let the diagnosis really drive the treatment. When you put them on the flat screen and you're showing images and you're kind of thinking, I think Dr. Beck's mostly thinking out loud when he's looking at everything and he's showing them their blink rate or their incomplete blink or their lack of, their meibomian coming out of the glands. And he looks at it and says, listen, half of the glands are not working. I think we start there. I think, we can do some things that can help you with the symptoms and get you some quick relief. We're not going to do that, but we should treat the long-term aspect of this as well, which is, the root cause, which is the obstruction, if that's the case. Because it sounds like you're like, was it tear care?
Yeah, I got a tear care unit.
Yeah. So and again, it's a hard, I guess I'd like to say is I take the selling out of the chair. We try and the way that we do things. We want the patient to be looking up there, almost asking to do it, not us telling them to do it as far as, what level they should do. They look at, hey, doc, how do I fix this? How do I, now that you've pointed out the problem, I see there's a real problem here. How do we go to the next level? And you're not one-on-one, you're kind of pointing at the screen going, I think, this is what we need to do. Clearly, we can all see that. And having talked to a lot of dry eye docs, I can tell you they all start off pretty shy when it comes to presenting these treatments. And then when I talk to them 6 months to a year later, I went golfing with a guy the other day. It does really well with IPL. He packages it up at $2,500, and he goes, now I just go straight. He goes straight to the BAM. He goes, I get it done. They're happy. Everybody's happy. I don't have to drag this out over 2 years. I hit them. But if they say no or they're not open to the idea, then he backs up and has his regular protocols. But don't be shy about, if you believe that what you're offering is going to help them, like you've seen the meibomian glands and you think tear care is going to be the answer for them, just go right at it, in confidence. I think you'll be fine. I don't think you need to sugarcoat it. And it's prescription is expensive, no matter what their insurance is. There's a lot of good options out there, but they're not cheap. I think we hear up to $600 a month. That's not helping anybody, I don't think. I mean, you should do it if it really is working and they can afford it. But tear care is cheap, much cheaper than that, and I think it should be a part of the care. And it's not either or. I think you can do both. Give them a whole treatment.
And just kind of talking about, treatment protocol as well, the things that we've learned from the DEWS 2 report, which, has been around for about 5 years now, is that with MGD, the main things that you want to hit are reducing inflammation, removing obstruction, and increasing production, right? And when you show the meibomian gland images or if you have anterior segment photography to go along with it, and you can show, well, here's the inflammation, here's the biofilm that's obstructing, and then the glands are not producing as much now because they've been blocked and inflamed, and you have to hit all 3 areas. That kind of sells the importance. Well, each treatment is different, that's going to all kind of combine together to make the best thing for you. So when patients start to ask, like, well, which one can I do that's going to be the best result? Well, it doesn't exactly work that way. We got to, open up the tops of those glands first so that when we do the expression, we can get everything out. And then when we get everything out, we need to be on something to supplement us so that we're producing better stuff rather than the stuff that might have been trapped in there in the first place.
So Aaron, are you not billing any of the dry eye follow-ups then through your medical insurance?
That would be Dr. Becker. I don't know. I know that if it's a private pay patient, they are paying $300 for the initial evaluation and then $150 for the follow-ups. If it is the follow-ups, I'm pretty sure we are billing office visits for that.
Okay.
Confirm and get back to you on that. I'm pretty sure we are.
That's true.
On top of the 300?
The 300 is for the initial day, is for the initial evaluation. Is that first day of, and they spend an hour with us. They go through, they have a keratograph. We do, I don't know, it's 26-point dry eye evaluation. It's inflammatory dry, it's tear lab, or, we're osmolarity. I mean, by the time they're done, they're totally, the amount of time that Dr. Beck and other docs spend with them, they're totally happy with that investment. One, because most doctors don't take that time to really dig into the root cause of dry eye. They don't, take it.
Yeah, so with that process, I'm sorry. So with
300 is.
Go ahead, Gary.
Your 300 is not just the visit. That includes mammography, like a couple of tear labs, right, left eye and stuff like that, because you can't get 300 for a visit for a drive, can
Correct.
you? I mean,
No, we put it all together. It's like $299, I think is what we charge for that. And it started, we went up and down in pricing, and that's been our sweet spot over the last 4 years, is right about $299 all in. Now, not everybody has, most people have insurance. So you can bill a portion of that. And we can bill photography, you know, and I'm not a billing expert, I to be honest with you, but I know there's a, you know, you can bill external photos, you can do some things to offset it. And then again, the follow-up, you're coming back in.
yeah,
But again,
I think it's important to, like, when we talk about this stuff for practice management purposes, to, you know, you throw out a number of 300, and I'm not criticizing you, don't get me wrong, because I appreciate all of your knowledge and everything, but like, some people may be new on here and they may be thinking, oh, I can charge 300 for a visit or blah, blah, blah. But, you know, you're charging, you know, 180 for a EM2, EM3. Some people charge an EM4 and do direct ophthalmoscopy or something like that and run up the bill. But then, you know, you're charging for external photos for monitoring meibomian gland dysfunction, maybe a couple of tear labs. And then the bill gets up to 300. It's not just a $300 visit charge, you know, and I think maybe some people, I don't know, maybe not. So,
yeah.
But I think it's important to kind of delineate what you're charging for each individual thing for the people on here to understand.
And thanks, Gary, for adding the input. This is kind of what it's about. If something is not clear, just speak up, because we all want to learn together. So.
Sorry, I'm a little bit confused. So the sequence of your exam is that you see them the first time as a regular EMM visit, and then you find out that they have dry eye, and then you ask them to follow up once again, and this second visit to further evaluate the dry eye as an hour-long dedicated process for dry eye. You then charge 300 and do not bill insurance. Is that how that works? Or is that second visit also insurance billed and you charge on top of that another fee?
So the way that it's done, sorry, I don't know, it looks like he might be muted. I think he was trying to.
Gary, you're muted.
Gary, you're muted.
Muted. There you go.
Yeah, you know, being optometrists, we see people under these vision care plans, and I know as an ophthalmologist, that's probably a little foreign to you, but so we're getting paid about $35 to $45 to see them, to, like I was back in 1990, to see them for an eye exam. And then, you know, I have them fill out a speed questionnaire, and then we do LipiScan on the people that score out 6 or above or have a dry eye complaint. And then I'll look at the glands in the exam room, and then I have them come back for a dry eye workup under their medical insurance. So, you know, I'm not seeing people for a medical visit on the front end and finding, you know, a bunch of this like you may be doing. I'm seeing them for vision exams and then finding them and having them come informing them for the medical. And I charge just like Aaron, you know, it's around $300 for the package when everything's said and done. So.
Yeah, we try to utilize their insurance as much as we can, of course. But again, sometimes it's just that, you know, that's all they have is a vision plan, and they're willing to pay out of pocket with an ABN or something over and above. And again, I am not the billing expert. We have a billing code that's great, and Dr. Beck probably knows way more about this, how we're doing the exact billing. But I know when we came up with a roundabout pricing of what everything costs to do it, was around $300 billable or payable, depending on their situation.
I want to pivot here a little. So I know Wendy Ann, you had a question. I'm happy to ask it for you. If you want to ask yourself, it was about teching. Okay. So she wants to know, do you have a dedicated technician doing this hour-long workup?
Sure. So to be clear, for our hour-long visit, it's actually only about 20 minutes of workup, to be quite honest with you. We start out with a tear lab OU. We do inflammatory OU, and then we do the series of pictures and videos with meibography, interferometry, anterior segment photos, the staining photos, and the OSDI that go into it. And that's kind of our main points that we're looking at for the dry eye evaluation. The reason why we make the actual visit in the hour is because after that's all said and done, it gives me about 5-10 minutes to be able to grade the exam, make sure I get my thoughts together of exactly how I want to present it to the patient. And we actually sit there for a good 25 minutes to be able to talk through, this is what's going on with your eyes and the ocular surface. This is why we did all this fancy testing. We're showing all the images of everything that we took, and really going in depth and in detail more than we actually see it. I mean, personally, I don't have any other practitioners that I see for my own health that I'm spending 25 minutes with to be able to discuss any of my diagnoses. And so they feel like that by taking that time to really invest in them understanding what's happening, it's easier for them to jump on board with the treatment plan. After they talk with me, they also talk with one of our consultants in the office to find out more about the billing side of it, because like we said, we don't really talk billing in the exam room. It's more a soft sell and what their insurance covers afterwards. So in total time, the patient's there for about an hour, hour and 15 minutes, but really it's about 20 minutes tech time and 20 minutes of doctor time that we'll be able to go through.
Sounds good. Thanks for the clarification here. We're gonna pivot a little. So we're gonna pass kind of the baton to Peter here. And Michelle Barron, thanks for being here, Michelle. She wants you to discuss the differences between Zest Zocular products and other traditional lid wipe / hygiene brands. So full disclosure, obviously you own the company, but you take a unique approach, I know.
Yeah. So I am the CEO of Zocular here, so it may be biased here, but I'll try to give it unbiased as much as possible here. So there's a lot of options out there for lid hygiene. You have everything from hypochlorous acid, tea tree oil based products to the okra based Zest Zocular products there. They all work very well, and it really has to do with what type of problems you want to address there. Now, with Zocular in particular, what differentiates it from other products really is the immediacy of action, meaning that if you do a Zest procedure, you're almost guaranteed an instant and pretty dramatic improvement in the dry eye symptoms, no matter where it's starting at, whether it's starting at a very high speed score, it would drop by about 40, 50, 80% within about 15, 20 minutes there, and it generally persists. And so that's one reason why Zest is popular for trying to help those patients who present with significant symptoms that they want some sort of instant gratification for. But as Jason had alluded to, it is a out-of-pocket procedure, and is similar to BluffX, where it really does take that kind of discussion with the patient to see what are their personalities like, what is the severity of their symptoms, and how much do they want to really address it there as a function of their clinical situation, right? If they have a lot of meibomian gland dropout, it's just completely inflamed, right? Obviously, you want to be a little bit more aggressive and not just wait it out and having, try something less aggressive.
I can speak a little bit to the comparison of the Zocular products to others. One, we've been using, we use a lot of different products in our clinics. And I can tell you the Zocular products are right there at the top of our patient satisfaction part. And it's not the cheapest. It actually, there is a decent retail on those, which does give you a decent margin on not just the Zest, but also the Zocular products. Peter and his team work very hard to keep the pricing fair for the doctors to be able to make a little bit of money on the products. And so I think it's a combo of being a little bit different. It's not everywhere. It's not in every Walmart and every, yes, but it's also, it does work. It is, more natural than probably some of the other stuff out there, okra based. It is ophthalmology designed, and that helps. And the packaging is great, and everything really about it's really been pretty awesome. And we were a little hesitant at the beginning because it's probably $10 to $15 more than everything else in that range. But patients come back, they love it, they really do like it. So I mean, we like Peter anyways, but I think the products do speak for themselves very well.
Yeah, it's interesting. And this kind of more on the practice management side of things. We've had Zest treatment and BluffX, and precursor, well, I guess a side precursor of AB Max that's no longer in existence as well. We've tried a bunch of different things in the office. What I like about the Zest treatment, and not to just make a whole advertisement about Dr. Pham's product, but is that it accomplishes multiple things in one task, right? If you have so many different options of different things to do for treatments, and you can have something that tackles inflammation as well as obstruction, you're hitting 2 out of the 3 main things right away for the patient, and then just have to build up their production as well. So instead of overwhelming the patient with all these different options of in-home and in-office treatments and everything we do, the more we can condense it for the patient, the better it is for them to be able to tolerate.
Getting back just to the basics of the the whole dry eye workup there, not to talk anymore about the Zocular or Zest there, but it's really important to evaluate them clinically, right? There's some things that we can do just as solo, right? I'm a huge fan of lacrimal irrigation, which I think is really underutilized and under-recognized there. And if we can't solve that nidus of inflammation on the ocular surface, almost anything we do is not going to work, right? And so I think that's one of the fundamental issues with any sort of dry eye workup is really evaluate the ocular surface system, right? Where there's only a few places where inflammation is coming from, right? And we all know it's an inflammatory disorder. And inflammation comes from blood, and it comes from another source, and so that's why almost all treatments that we have are directed towards the eyelid, because that's where all the vasculature is, right? We're not going to, attack the conch too much, even though that's the second most vascularized structure around the eye. And the third major source of inflammation, right, is coming actually from a place where hardly anyone is looking, and that's coming from the lacrimal sac, right? It's actually a hollow chamber that basically collects water, proteins, bacteria, and debris. You mix all those together and you get sewage. And so what you have literally is a sewage tank next to our eye that is directly connected to the tear lake, right? And so literally that our whole lacrimal system is literally an extension of our GI tract, right? The GI tract doesn't start in our oropharynx, it actually starts in our eye, right? Because everything comes down into the lacrimal sac, down the lacrimal duct, into our oropharynx, and out through our GI tract there. And so why this is so important and why it's often missed is because it's hidden behind bones practically, right? And if you think about it, it also explains why punctal plugs work. Punctal plugs, as we know, doesn't work on everyone, but it does work. And it doesn't work for the reasons I think a lot of us have been taught, which is that it somehow raises or increases the aqueous set point on the eye, right? That kind of doesn't make scientific sense just from what we learned in the 6th grade, right? Because our eye is at a pretty homeostatic level, right? At any point in time, it's neither tearing, nor is it turning into a raisin. So you know that there is a balance between the amount of tear that's being produced and the amount that tear is being lost or taken away from the eye, right? So rate in is equal to rate out. And now if we were to block the tear duct, right, we know it drains about 30–70% of the tear, right? And so you would expect that on almost everyone we put a plug in, you would have epiphora, because now you're upsetting the rate out, and you've probably done nothing to rate in, right? Because you only put in some silicone plug there. Right, so you expect almost everyone to have epiphora because the rate out is less, but no one does practically, right? It's really rare to have punctal plugs cause epiphora. And so obviously there's some sort of compensatory mechanism that basically now balances the rate in and rate out again, right? And the only place it can come out from is either through increased conj absorption or through increased blinking for evaporation, right? Now, if there is and most likely there's a combination of both to prevent the epiphora. If it's from an evaporated process, what happens? We know that only water evaporates. Protein, bacteria aren't just going to fly up into the air. And so that then causes, for almost every punctal plug patients, there's going to be an increase in the concentration of inflammatory mediators. And yet, surprisingly, when you put in the plugs, almost no one gets increase in dry eye, right? So that tells us something really important. It tells us that the eye actually has a spare capacity to quench inflammation, right? But yet punctal plugs still help in a portion of these patients. So that then tells us that there is another source of inflammation that overwhelms the spare capacity for inflammation control. The only place it comes from that possibly is going to be coming from the lacrimal sac, which basically, because there's such a huge concentration gradient, high concentration in the sac, it's going to flow back into the tear lake. And the punctal plugs is literally just blocking that retrograde flow. And so on almost any patient that where the patients are really excited and really happy about their punctal plugs, and they probably want to kill you if you tell them to remove it. But actually, if you remove it and you copiously irrigate the tear sac, you get a better clinical response because of this basic, conservation of mass principle.
Mhm. And that's what we've seen actually. And Dr. Evans and I have this conversation probably once every couple of months. Is I actually probably remove more punctal plugs than I put in at this point. And not to saying that they don't work for some patients, but most of the patients who are coming in for me, I'm actually doing the inflammatory MP9 testing, and if they have a really strong response, that where I don't want to plug up the drain and keep more inflammation particles, EMMP9s, right on the eye surface. So either if I do feel like that they would benefit from the plugs, I'm also going to start them on some pretty heavy anti-inflammatory treatment, whether it be some of the pharmaceutical products like Restasis, Cidra, Cequa, etc., a concurrent steroid that goes along with it. Even amniotic membrane treatments to help decrease the inflammation on the ocular surface if I'm going to be putting a plug in with somebody who really just even looks like they have that major inflammation to go through.
Peter, when would you recommend irrigating the lacrimal sac?
So for me, I irrigate almost everyone that walks through the door, but there are certain signs and symptoms that are fairly good indicators that there is some sort of lack of tear sac problem, right? Our classic teaching is that, don't even think about tear flow unless there's epiphora, right? And then you got to do a DNI. But if you look carefully, a lot of patients will have inferior nasal conjunctival chalasis. That's almost a telltale sign that there is an issue with the tear sac, because that's where the highest concentration gradient is going to be once there's a retrograde flow, concentration flow back into the tear lake there. It's going to concentrate where it comes out, right? And then the concentration gradient decreases the further you get away from the punctum there. And so anytime you see any sort of inferior nasal conj chalasis, I would always just clean it out. And if there's a lot of vascularity on the lid margin, all of that vascularity is going to contribute to increased inflammatory response that's going to be drained into that sac. And so I always do a irrigation on those patients as well. And then, of course, any patients where you've already tried antibiotics, steroids, amniotic membrane, the whole shebang, and they still have dry eye, well, there's only one place where there's so much inflammation that can come from, right? If you already clean out the lids, you wash out the eye, and they still have dry within seconds, right? It's unusual, right? The blood can't just send out inflammation that quickly. The only place it comes from is coming from that sac. And so those are the patients I would copiously irrigate. And you really have to irrigate with several mLs of saline. You can't just drip 1 or 2 drops in there and call it a day. And one way you can tell that there's an issue is that the minute that it flows down into the back of the mouth, it's going to taste nasty. It literally tastes like sewage. They'll tell you that in 4-letter words usually. All right, and then that really tells you that there's an issue.
And how does one learn how to do that irrigation, and what is the tool used? Because it's not a needle you're putting in there, it's something else.
Yeah, I always like to use a blunt tip cannula. The reason I like that is because, we're always taught classically to numb up the eye and dilate the punctum. But there's really no need to numb, because our lid margin has very little pain receptors, right? The only time you have pain is when you start mucking around with the mucosal surface. So you don't want to obviously poke on the conch, right? And the only time you're going to touch the mucosa surface is the when you're kind of iffy, and you only go in about 2 or 3 millimeter, and then you torque the cannula. Now that cannula is touching the mucosa surface of the cannuliculus. That's painful. Now the second pain point comes in when you start irrigating, and there's a distal obstruction beyond the sac. Then that obviously causes the backflow that then fills the sac quickly and it expands, right? Expansion of any mucosa surface, like, you know, we have in our gut, is quite painful. And so you always want to start off slowly when you start pushing down on a syringe, and then increase the flow as much as the patient can tolerate. Now, if you just press a little bit and they're jumping out of its chair because it's so painful, pull out, replace that saline with an anesthetic. Lidocaine is what I like to use, and then numb up the entire sac. Once the sac is numb, you can basically do almost anything to that area, to the lacrimal system, you'll be okay. The caveat is that if you do numb up the sac, chances are the anesthetic is going to drip to the back of the throat, in which case the throat is now numb, and you want to always advise them don't eat or drink, otherwise they're going to choke on their food half the time, and that's the last thing you want after an irrigation.
Dr. Pham, the other day when we were talking at Vision Expo, one of the things, the gauge and the length of the cannulas that you prefer.
Yes, I wish I had let's see, do I have I don't have one right here, but anyway, it's a 25 gauge cannula. A 25 gauge cannula will fit through almost any punctum without dilation. If you do a 23, it's a little bit big for about 30, 40% of the punctum, because, that's the other, Lynn, just to your point there, if the punctum is stenose, that means that there's probably an issue with the sac as well, because that's the chronic inflammation is what's causing the constricture of the punctum there. So that's another telltale sign that you need to really irrigate that sac there. But a 25 gauge cannula will go through a stenose punctum with no problem. And you want it to be blunt tip so it comes down like this and not have an open bore, because that open bore will catch on the mucosa surface as it's going in. And when you do go in, you always want to push and head towards that common canal. You don't want to just push 2 or 3 millimeter and start kind of torquing. Otherwise, that's going to be kind of painful.
Another question, actually, maybe Dr. Pham would be able to provide information on it. Are there curved cannulas that would be, a good use for the procedure itself?
I don't like to use curve because, again, because of the curve, it torques right onto the mucosa surface. So I just like to use a straight one and go straight through. Unless you want to curve it in and then start probing in a more aggressive fashion, but I usually don't do that.
Yeah, for like a dacryocystitis or something.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had quite a few people join us here. So there's 41 people here. Thanks to everyone for being here, by the way. It's pretty awesome that we're able just to hang out and chat about dry eye. At any time, you can unmute yourself and just literally ask a question, or just put it in the chat and I'll ask it for you. So don't be shy. We're all here to share knowledge.
Sure. I just to not keep the dead air, I know that early on in the chat window, there were some questions about IPL. I think that a bunch of the attendees have either purchased it or maybe looking to be able to bring it into their practices. Does anybody want to share their experience on getting started with it and how they've implemented it?
We're gonna have an awkward silence till someone volunteers. So
Come
on, I know.
Trying to engage you guys. Come on, I'm
yeah, I see a bunch of IPL people on here too. I know you guys. I've seen your invoices. I'm joking. Well, I guess to preface, while we wait for someone to talk about how they've instituted IPL, what is the theory behind IPL for starters? And it seems to be the new frontier. How did it just all of a sudden get the popularity? Did it have to do with the FDA approval or what?
Out of curiosity, how many people here have an IPL machine here? Maybe, I'm not sure if I can see that, do the little reaction, but raise your hand if you raise your hand like this if you have an IPL. I'm just curious as to how many people.
Yeah, good idea. There's a little reaction thing at the bottom. So
right next to the show caption or record to the right, you'll see a raised hand, or
I just put one up. So we have 2.
I'm going to give it 2 raised hands because we actually have 2 IPLs in our practice.
1, 2, 3, 5. We have 5 IPLs here. 6, 7. Gosh, we're winning. We should win the lottery. I think if we all bought one lottery ticket, we could just split the funds here. I think, what is it, $1 billion now?
At least.
Okay. Anyone want to share? You can unmute yourself. You don't have to be on camera. Just tell us, how long have you had it? How's it working? What is the patient feedback? Your treatment path. Is it four treatments? Are you expressing, after that? Any type of nutraceuticals?
This is the main reason why I came on here tonight, was because we purchased an IPL about 3 months ago, but we delayed getting it until September, and we finally just had our training and everything a couple of weeks ago. So we actually did treatments on 5 staff members, and all 3 of us docs. Just so we knew, we did full face, we did just dry eye treatments, all that kind of stuff. So we had the experience of how to express to the patients on what it was going to feel like. We have about 35 to 40 patients already signed up for this.
Wow.
Over the last 6+ months that we knew we were going to be probably purchasing this, we just kind of put it out there, and patients were like, yeah, absolutely. So
David, sorry to interrupt, David. Where do you practice? I guess let's get some geography, help tell the story a little.
Sure. I'm in the middle of nowhere now. I'm halfway between Erie and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So I have a pretty rural practice. So we literally are currently the only IPL within a 2-hour drive.
Okay. And before IPL, before you made that purchase, what was your dry eye protocol?
It was basically hot compresses, lid scrubs, hypochlorous acid, omega-3s, and then Restasis, Xiidra, etc., topical, Hisuvus, those kind of things.
Okay, cool. Thanks for the background there. It helps.
Yep. And so
David, just a quick question. What was your decision point that triggered you to purchase the IPL? Was it because you're spending like 3 days a week doing dry eye now, or it's just because another reason?
Because, well, I've been doing this for 23 years now, and I have just seen the dry eye population skyrocket. And it's not just old people over 40, whoever said that. Yeah, because I'm 47, it's okay. It's also 15 and 16-year-olds. And so it's not just old people per se, even though that's a major portion of my population, but I'm seeing tons of kids with dry eye as well. And it's meibomian gland dropout excessively. And so I had been researching IPL for the last couple of years. And I thought, when I first heard about it, I'm like, yeah, light, this is too good to be true. I don't think so. Anyways, make a long story short, I went and signed up for treatment myself at one trade show that I went to, and I fell in love with it. Needless to say, just like many of us, when we go to these trade shows, we drank a little too much and stayed out a little too late. And I had 0 bags under my eyes for over a week. And I literally had half a treatment, and I'm like, this is the real deal stuff. And my eyes felt amazing. And so I purchased the device on a whim that weekend. So
Wow.
Needless to say, so we've kind of been instituting our protocol. We went to a conference a couple of weeks ago and listened to a speaker about having a flow sheet, basically. I think it was basically what Ryan was talking about earlier. And Aaron, having that flow sheet of the severity of dry eye and how to pick and choose what you're going to use on those patients. So if I have a super mild asymptomatic dry eye patient, am I going to go to IPL anytime soon? Probably not, because that's kind of overkill. And then it looks like we're the used car salesman trying to sell them everything and pay for my kids' college. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. We have the enthusiasm, we have that kind of stuff, and the machine is ready to go, but it's finding the time to institute that whole entire process. And it sounds like, Ryan, it took you guys years to kind of get to that point as well. So it kind of makes me feel good. So yeah.
Can someone, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Perry.
I was saying,
for-
can someone who has a lot of experience with IPL? Hey Lee, how's it going? He's in Australia, so welcome. Welcome
Dr.
here.
Plowman
Feel
has a
free
lot of
to-
experience with IPL.
Feel free to unmute at any time. I know Lee, you're a plethora of information, so. But I'll let you go, Ryan. So.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So when it came down to treatments and putting in something like IPL into the practice, or for example, LipiFlow that has a set amount of time, it was tricky right after the first part because people would, want to schedule treatments, but then you have to jump back and forth into a comp exam and then refract a 6-year-old and then, back over to, this, that, and the other. So we tried that at the beginning. We got through about the first 3 or 6 months of implementing it and getting our staff pretty proficient at doing the procedure on a timely basis so that it could flow somewhat well within our exams. But as it became too much, then we had to start designating certain days that were more for maybe an afternoon of IPL treatments or a morning on Tuesdays and an afternoon on Thursdays, so that you had that designated technician who might be the most proficient at helping you out and getting everything set up. And then it was kind of one after another, a procedure as we kind of go through. That helped out immensely. And then especially with instituting protocol, if any of you guys have done research on the protocols themselves, we use Dr. Perriman's protocol in our practice group. Laura Perriman has a great series of dry eye master videos that she walks you through not only the settings of the IPL, but how to perform the procedure all the way from start to finish, cleanup and everything included. She uses the cornea shields, the laser graded cornea shields like we do, and actually does some direct application right to the upper lids as well as the lowers as well. And we found those protocols to be really, really helpful. Perry had mentioned a little bit before about, doing 4 treatments, how many. It's obviously case by case basis about how many treatments you do, but since most of the clinical data is showing really great effects after at least that initial 4 treatment set, we actually made a package deal that individually you can pay for a session in our area for about $350 for a dry eye treatment session. But if you buy the 4-pack together, we'll charge $1,200. And then we guarantee that compliance of you're going to be here every 2 weeks to make sure you're getting your session to go.
Yeah. That's pretty much where we're at as well. That seems to be the consensus. And I kind of softballed that because patients asked how much it was going to be when we got the new technology, and I said, yeah, it's going to be somewhere around $1,000, $1,200 for the 4 treatments, or $300 plus individually if you want to go down that route. And they seem to be on board, especially if they're paying, like Aaron said, $600, or like my parents are paying $600 for Restasis because that's their copay with their insurance. So yeah, I think that makes sense, especially long term. To implement it that way.
I'd like to jump in for a second. David, congrats on getting the IPL. That's a big step. I know it's not a cheap piece of equipment to bring in. I think you're confident in your practice, which is great that you can handle it and your team can handle it. Where do you have your IPL? Is it in a separate room, or is it in the? Where do you have it located?
No, not currently. When we do start this treatment process, we're going to be wheeling it from exam room to exam room, or like Ryan talked about, we also toyed around with having just an IPL day, where we have it where one room is that treatment room, and then the other room could be a dry eye workup room. We don't have enough room to have a separate dry eye spa area, but that's in the near horizon because we're probably going to be adding onto the building because we're out of room as well because I hired a third dog. So yeah, there's a lot of pieces in motion, but eventually my goal is to eventually have it in a whole separate little suite that's going to be spa-like. So
I guess my follow-up question is, I'm a little not concerned at all, but it's more of, we hear it a lot where people bring in the new equipment. They've got all low-hanging fruit. You've got the last 6 months of people that, you've been cherry picking and doing it. And after, it's almost like when you are selling insurance, you start calling all your friends and family, and you're doing pretty well the first few months, and then it hits you, and now you have to drive in new patients that are going to know about IPL. So I mean, one thing we did is we walked into our office and said, how would a patient know that we have an IPL? How would they even know that we're a dry eye specialty clinic? They have no idea. We're very retail. Glasses still pay our bills, and our medical is very good, but we need something to bring that conversation to the forefront. Not that it's overbearing, but something that shows, hey, we're excited about something new that we brought into the practice. And unfortunately, usually those devices go into a dark room with nothing around it. until you can figure that out. That's what we did for 6 months. It wasn't until we built a tiny room. It's a tiny little room in our first clinic that we brought it in 3 years ago. But just talking about dry eye and bringing the awareness and building the environment around your dry eye clinic that you guys are, or even if it's just a room, all excited about. You know, the patient hits your pre-test room, they may never even see that room that has that equipment in there. And if they're in the pre-test room, those pre-test rooms are a perfect place to put things. People often put all their expensive $200,000, $300,000 worth of equipment in a dark little room with nothing on the walls. It doesn't look as pretty as the rest of the office. We went out and we put glass doors and made it really one of the best looking rooms in the place, just because that's where all of our money was, in the technology. So now that you've spent that kind of money, I would just recommend you really build something around it that just tries to build that pipeline, because even the mild patients that you talked about, you're not going to throw IPL. You should still plant the seed. Is listen, hey, Ms. Jones, you're lucky that you don't need some of the stuff that we offer. All you need is now, is a over the counter product. But down the road, just so you know, we have everything here. And you're going to, it's funny, I think Dr. Beck can speak to this. We're doing just as much. It's funny, he changed his background, Dr. Beck's back. That's our pre-test.
Yeah, you were talking about it, so I had to do it.
So it is, it's a pretty room. So, but it could be anything. Just, usually it's a dark room, but I think you should, get that pipeline going for these patients, because it's going to be a stark drop off when you get past those first 30. Now, what I was going to say to Beck was, you're going to get a lot of people that look at the beauty aspect of it as well, of the IPL, and it snowballs. And that's how it did with us. So the wrinkles it's not just inflammation and dry eye. So it's funny, if you have an IPL, it kind of turns into an aesthetics little wing if you actually build it. And if you build it will come kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was one of the main reasons, I shouldn't say that's main, that was one of the other little things that put me over the edge of purchasing it, was the aesthetic part of it, because I thought, hey, this is going to be a great thing, even though we can't technically advertise it as that. That's going to get the patients to come back in the door. My 2 staff members, one had pretty severe acne that she was dreadfully insecure about, and she didn't even want to take off her makeup to have this treatment done. And then the other one had pretty bad rosacea, and even after just their very first treatments, they look amazing. So they're chomping at the bit to get their second treatments done so they can keep going with it. So I have another gentleman patient that has really severe dry eye that I put on the list, and he has rosacea grade 10. And he's a rough, tough guy, blue collar worker. And I showed him a picture of what it could do, and he goes, hell, if you can make me look like that, I'll pay the money. And it was little things like that I just kind of were planting those seeds early on. And so I think we just have to make sure that my younger docs also keep doing that as well. But yeah, thank you for the ideas, Aaron. That's great.
We have a question from Leanne. She wants to know if you feel using corneal shields yields better results than laser shields. Whoever can answer that.
So for us in our practice, I personally do the laser graded cornea shields, just because we actually having that direct application to the lid. Yes, the light does travel, and we can talk about the science of the photon movement through the contact gel and actually passing through to the upper lids. But getting more of that exposure to those direct upper lids has yielded some better results. The thing about IPL, if we kind of talk about the science behind it a little bit, is not only is it a treatment for meibomian glands in general, but it also is demodicidal, right? Because it will fry the little buggers that are out there as well. It will tighten the skin in the area, right? Which actually can lead to better compression of the MGs as well, and get better production, as well as apply a little bit of heat to liquefy a little bit of the meibum that's in there as well. So we're hitting it from multiple different angles. And if we avoid touching those meibomian glands throughout the upper lid, which are responsible for a fair amount of our meibum, then I think we're doing the patient, in my personal opinion, just a little bit of a disservice by not going, direct contact.
Okay.
Aaron, I have another question, or Ryan as well. How do you handle this aesthetic part of it when technically that's not in our scope of care? I don't know what it's like in Florida, but in Pennsylvania, that's definitely not in our scope of care. So how do you handle that if patients are coming in asking specifically for that, or how does that work in your practice after the last 3 years?
Sure. So just to kind of touch on that for us, Florida is where we practice, and IPL is technically a gray area in Florida. Because optometrists are allowed to do periorbital non-surgical procedures, but there is nothing specifically saying we can or can't do IPL specifically. So legislation hopefully be coming soon to be able to guarantee us that we have this FDA procedure, FDA approved procedure that we can actually say, yes, absolutely we can do it. In the meantime, we've addressed it 2 ways. Number one, I mentioned to patients that it is a potential side effect of the treatment. Ideally, we are going to treat dry eye, but one of the potential side effects is that we might be tightening the skin in the area. And I apologize in advance if that happens. And so that tends to, alleviate a little bit of the stress about learning about the procedure in general. The second thing is we also have a close association with a medical doctor in the area, a cornea specialist, who will come to our clinic once a month to be able to do some full facial IPLs. Since we're limited to periorbital in the state of Florida, for the patients who want that full facial treatment, then we have him there as a service to be able to go with too. And we've contracted that out, and being able to splitting fees and things as well, since the non-covered service was pretty easy to be able to create that contract.
In Australia, we're licensed to be able to treat rosacea, so we can do full face treatments, which is great. So I like to go after those. If we're using the TOIOS settings, if we happen to be able to reduce some pigmentation or get some other secondary benefits, then that's a bonus for us.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't market anything for beauty, as far as external marketing. It's all dry eye. And again, it's like one of those, if you look close enough, you'll probably find dry eye in anyone, especially the older population. So it really hasn't become a big issue, but we do have an MD that comes in and does some things that we don't do in our scope. We have a nurse on site as well. One of our techs is a nurse. So, but overall, it's not our focus, but it is a side effect. Again, if we stick to the dry eye, I think you'll have plenty of people that, not only that, they see the beauty products that we sell in our office that are good for the eye. They jump on that. So it's kind of the beauty is a good side effect.
Okay, thank you.
Someone has a question about this from Bradley Schuster. He wants to know any thoughts on how you decided which IPL device to add. So Gary, I saw you mentioned some name I've never heard of. There's obviously Luminous, which is probably the market leader in terms of recognition and number of units in the field. Gary, how did you decide which unit?
Well, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. So I went to Crystal Breimer's dry eye course and looked at the Luminous and everything. And then I had already purchased a few years ago Pelave radio frequency, which is a previous version of Tempsure. And so I was familiar with Cynosure. And the good thing about their IPL unit is they have a melanin reader. Basically, it's a skin reader that you stick up and you measure 4 different spots on the skin. So you don't have to kind of guess whether they're a type 1 or a type 2 or type 3.
Fitzpatrick reading you're talking about.
Yeah, because you can't do darker pigmented skin or you'll burn it. And so I purchased the Cynosure. I just made a comment on there about some of the docs on here, and I don't know who all on here has. I think we've only got a few of us with IPL. I do think my personal experience has been that IPL is a lot more hype. I know it's great, but don't be afraid about starting dry eye with LipiFlow and at-home therapies. I started out with radio frequency alone, and I find that treatment with heat and expression like radio frequency and LipiFlow can help probably 70–80% of our patients. IPL is really good for inflammatory dry eye with rosacea and stuff like that, but I think a lot of people are starting to use it on everyday patients for dry eye and selling it as, this is there's good, better, best. IPL is best, LipiFlow is better, at home is here. That's not necessarily the case in reality. So I think a lot of us, me included, have bought into the IPL, and I've quite frankly, I'm more successful with radio frequency and LipiFlow than I am closing deals with IPL. And if I look at my treatment results, they're just as good if the patients don't have rosacea and inflammatory dry eye. And so, my opinion is, look, I'm not gonna lie, I went out and bought an IPL. I got all the units and stuff. Biggest mistake I've ever done in my career. And I've owned 6 practices, sold them. I'm a solo doc now. And I'm practicing for fun 3 days a week and riding off into the sunset and doing all this shit because I'm having fun and love it. But God, guys and gals, IPL to me, if I put out the treatments and the return on investment versus radio frequency and at-home therapy and LipiFlow, you guys would laugh at me and say, God, how could he be this successful and this stupid all in one, So that's my take. So ask me a question. It's like my buddy from Brazil says, my life is an open book, but there's many pages missing, and I might not talk about my mistakes, but this is one I'll talk about. So,
well, I think actually, Gary, you bring up a really good point in the fact that whenever you're evaluating bringing a new treatment into the practice, take a look at your patient base first. Take a look at what are the most prevalent diagnoses that are coming in, and then what's going to be the most effective way to treat it. So I practice in Boca Raton, Florida, and Boca Raton has a high Caucasian patient base with a lot of ocular rosacea, just we're kind of running rampant throughout here. And so we knew that it was going to be a really effective treatment for us because we saw the need in probably, 60-70% of the patients who were actually walking through the door. If I practiced in an area where we didn't have patients who would even qualify to have IPL done due to their Fitzpatrick skin types, then it wouldn't have made sense for me to be able to take a look at that technology in coming through. So I think you made a really good point. Let's, take a look deep at your patients first.
Yeah, we also.
I think Alan has a question here. You're raising your hand.
I don't have a question, Perry. You know that I got this stuff. So Perry and I, we bought this gadget, 4 years ago? I'm on my last payment, Perry.
Well, that's good. Yeah, I know. We walked up to the booth and I negotiated it for you. You should be thankful.
Yeah. Well, he did. Now, I guess what bothers me, guys, is we now have the approved version. Well, when Perry and I bought it, there was no approved version, and they didn't say something like, well, this isn't FDA approved, and later we're going to make one that's FDA approved, and we're going to make it look like you guys are all dirt. Because you bought one
the M22 model
before. 4 years before, and all you guys are coming on going, oh, look. No, Perry and I, Ray and I have been doing this for 4 stinking years. So I have a little bit of insight into IPL, and I'm getting ready to sell mine, Perry. I'm going to sell it. I'm going to get radio frequency.
Okay. Well, so if there's any buyers in here, raise your hand.
No, I got a buyer. I got a buyer. And so here's a little dirty secret. You can now buy the M22 for $50,000 instead of $100 for OptiLight. And do you honestly believe there's any difference?
Hey, I actually,
hello, people. Yeah, I'm listening.
I actually agree with that. As we have an M22, that's the IPL that I use for our procedures and treatments.
Look, we've got a little sticky thing, where you could put the little small crystal on it and do all the same stuff. I've been doing the same stuff for 4 years, and everybody's all excited. And people around town, they say, oh, that Panzer guy, he's got the M22. It's not FDA approved. Well, okay, so your OptiLight's approved for targets to targets, big whoop. And you got half the filters I got, big whoop. And you paid twice the price I paid, big whoop. But I'm sorry to come in and take over, but the truth be known, the truth be known, IPL doesn't hold a candle to low level light, not a flickering of a candle.
We'll
Now,
talk
if
about
you
it.
have low level light.
So what is LLLT? I think that's by was it Marco?
Yeah.
The red
It's
mask thing that
Espeon.
goes over your head. What give
Yeah.
us the science on it. What is your
Oh my God, you don't know the
viewpoint?
science on it. Okay, so it was developed by NASA in a space program. Okay, it has unbelievable utilization. Now, think about this for a minute. Espeon has a unit that is low level light and an IPL, which they sell for about 40,000, while all you folks are out there screaming for a $100,000 machine. Which, by the way, you think they negotiated before, Perry? They ain't nothing compared to what they're doing now. I mean, people walk in there and they tell them it's like 180,000 and they want to get it for 80. So, I mean, we squeezed them for about 25. They're squeezing now way lower. But so the low level light therapy is called photobiomodulation. And I got to tell you guys, this thing makes IPL look like, I don't know, a horse and buggy. And again, remember, you're doing this now. I've been doing it for 43 years, but I did IPL for 4 years and I've done low level light for 2. And the difference is night and day. So again, I'm not going to dissuade all you guys from going to spend $100,000, but low level light kicks ass. In 15 minutes, you can make your patient better. Now, there's a downside to that. You don't make as much money because if you fix them quick, you're not going to make $1,200, $1,500. So, but what I do is I combine the two. And the reason I'm going to switch to radio frequency is because it can be done on, how shall I say this politely, darker complexions. Now, you're in Boca Raton, you got a lot of blonde-haired, blue-eyed redheads or whatever. I'm in Texas. I've got people with a little slightly darker skin tones. And when I first got my IPL, I did Hispanic people. I mean, I did their whole damn face. It looked like somebody beat them with a shovel. And no, I mean, that's the way they looked before I started, if you will. But I can tell you that the problem that you face with IPL, God, I hate to get into this, is that the results are not instantaneous. And so you have to sell them on the fact that you're going to do 4 treatments before they're going to feel some better. Whereas if you're doing low level light, they're going to feel better right away. So what I tell some of them, if they happen to be a redhead and has rosacea, I say, well, we do a combination of the two. And I do the IPL first, which kind of damages the skin, truth be known. And then I do the low level light therapy to kind of improve the skin. Low level light therapy, I'm really surprised that all of you hadn't really heard much about it.
We have one person, Dr. Ryan Winters here has LL. You guys have it too?
We have as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we have that. That's great.
And tell them what the results are. Tell them what the results are.
It's a phenomenal technology. You know, we got it about 1.5 years ago. The Marco unit that has different colors of low level light actually available depending on the different mask that you choose. So essentially, it's called photobiomodulation, right? Where what it's doing is using consistent photons of light set at the right frequency to provide treatments to the meibomian glands. The different colors and the different frequencies have different effects. The red is supposed to be beneficial for the meibomian glands. The blue is more for anti-inflammatory processes. The yellow is for adipose and fat-related tissue that's in the area as well. And instead of doing these quick insults of pulses, like you had mentioned, into that periorbital area, this is more in rejuvenation and trying to use kind of like the same technology between the rejuvenation beds and UV tanning beds that are out there as well. And the results of that, I agree with you. I think that combining the low level and the intense light is how I describe it to patients, is that we're attacking it from 2 fronts. You know, we're hitting down the inflammation and the Demodex and from the IPL, and then rejuvenating from the LLT, and then comboing it that way. And it's been phenomenal. And then also, I know we were talking about Fitzpatrick skin types and the limitations on patients. One of the other IPL devices that we got as well, sorry, you want to even add more fuel to the fire, is from the ESW, the French company that have an IRPL, if anybody has heard of it before. It's intense regulated pulse light that actually takes the pulses and spreads the energy out over more pulses rather than the traditional Toyos or Berriman protocols. And that spreading out makes it a little bit more comfortable of a procedure, but actually able to treat down to Fitzpatrick 5 as far as the skin types are concerned.
Well, so can
just-
you with radio frequency, right? I mean, or is what you're describing actually radio frequency?
No, it's truly an IPL, but it's just a different regulation on how it's
Well,
spread
the
out
radio
energy.
frequency instrument comes with IPL and radio frequency.
So yeah, we haven't got a
You
chance to
hadn't
play with
seen
it
that
yet,
one.
but
You weren't
I've seen
at
it, but I
Business
didn't get a
Expo,
chance to play
obviously.
with it. Yeah.
Well, all I'm saying is that when I have these people that look as skin color as me and they're Fitzpatrick 4, I can't go to 5, you know. And so with the radio frequency, you have 2 heads, one which is IPL and one which is radio frequency, and you can go down to 6. And so since I have a, how shall I say it politely, darker complected patient base, I need something for those people. Now, their low level light therapy is unfriggin' believable. So I will share an interesting story with you about my low level light therapy. My brother.
What is the cost of a unit? Roughly?
Okay, well, if you get the combined, I think it's about 40. If you get just the red mask, it's like 26. The difference is that they sell you the mask by the minute. So it costs
It's a per
you
minute
around-
charge?
Yep,
You have to-
by $1 a minute.
Yeah,
But I
the
can
lights
give
only
you
last so long. Somebody use.
But for no, they have a dongle on it. It's not got anything to do with how long the damn light would last. The light would probably last a year, but they put a
Timed
dongle on it.
obsolescence.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
yeah, well, but let's be truthful, Perry. Do you want a company that sells you a one-shot wonder and goes out of business, or do you want a company that's still in business? And so if they sold you a mask and you could use it for the next 5 years, they would probably go out of business. We have seen many one-shot wonder companies, and
Eyes on.
they have to have a consumable or they won't be in business. Now, I'm going to tell you guys what's coming, and I'm not trying to get off the subject. Low-level light is going to be used for dry macular degeneration. It's going to be used for myopia control, and it's just unbelievable. It's unbelievable where this is going to. Okay, now, so what I was going to tell you was that the difference is that you can make the person happy on the first visit. I've been doing IPL for 4 years, and nobody walked out happy on the first visit. If they were, it was placebo, because it does take time for those vessels to constrict. And so does IPL work? Absolutely. Is it the one-shot wonder that Dr. Perriman or Dr. Toyos or Dr. Epstein used to promote it as? It is not. It is a process, and people aren't always interested in a lengthy process. I do the low-level light in 1 week. Okay, now I don't make as much as you make on the IPL, although I have an IPL, but I just find that if I look at those lids and they don't have a single red vessel on them, I'm going to have a little tougher time finding the placement for the IPL compared to low-level light therapy. Now, if you look at low-level light therapy, it's currently used by the hair growth companies. They sell that Capella cap for $2,000. Bosley sells a cap. It grows hair. If you look at Tommy Copper, they're selling it for your knee, for your back. This is not voodoo. This is not voodoo. This is real, and it works fast. I did 4 of them today. Okay. So, I might do 4 of mine and make what you all make on 2 of yours, but my staff can do mine. I mean,
so Alan, you're saying that works really well. Which kind of disease processes do you find it most helpful for? Obviously, it sounds like it works in your practice very well for MGD.
You're gonna freak when I tell you what I'm gonna tell you.
Okay.
Whole show of hands. How many of you test osmolarity? No hands. What a surprise. Okay.
No,
So-
we got a few. We got a few here. People just want to put in the chat who does Tier Lab or Tier Osmolarity. Okay, we'll find out.
So here's what I'm going to tell you about all of this stuff. When you have a failure, and you will, okay, I want you to think osmolarity, okay, and I'm going to want you to and I'm not here to promote Tier Lab. They don't pay me anything. They don't so much as give me a free tip. I'm going to tell you that if you do not have elevated osmolarity, or if you do not have a difference in osmolarity between the two eyes, you have what Dr. Brill likes to call pain without stain. And when you do all the IPL in the world, all the low level light in the world, these people will be failures. Why? Because you're not treating the right thing. You're treating the wrong thing. You might get a little bit of a kick out of the red light, but you'll get zero kick out of IPL because you're treating the wrong thing. We've decided that everybody has meibomian gland disease. I had a lady cry in the chair today. Oh my God, I wanted to cry myself. She's 30 years old and she comes in, she drives 35 miles for me to be the dry eye guru. Okay, now I see some things popping up. Alan, what is your protocol? Alan, what is your protocol? Okay, so I will tell you my protocol. I do my 3 little machines. Everybody gets ORA, optical response analyzer, which again, people are going to go, what the hell's that? Oh, that's that damn NCT. That's no good. Okay, fine. Now we're not going to, another day.
Hysteresis measurement.
Yeah. Then they do my eyes on aberrometer. I can actually see how bad they see. Nobody has one of those either. I just bought another one the other day, Perry, 20 years old, and I found a lady that had one with 37 uses on it. This would be like finding a 57 Chevy in somebody's garage that's driven 3 miles. Okay. And then I do an Optomap on every single patient. Now, you all may say to me, Optomap, humbug. Okay. The reason I do an Optomap on every single dry eye patient is I do not want them claiming that I have injured them. Okay, so go ahead and laugh. Everybody gets an Optomap or they get out the door. I had a lady the other day came in just for low level light or for IPL. And I said, we're going to do an Optomap. And she said, no, you just look in my eyes. I said, see that door, lady? You can leave now. Well, why? I said, you see this butt behind me? I'm covering it. I said, and you're not going to claim that I have damaged you with my low level light or my IPL. So just take that to the bank, boys and girls, and realize that you need proof that you did not destroy their macula with your magic red light or your magic white light. Okay. So anyway, so I do these 3 instruments and everybody laughs at me, oh my God, you're doing that. Now I go into my room where I bought my stellar new, what the hell's Firefly. Okay. Everybody know what a Firefly is? Don't know what a Firefly is. I just bought that the other day, Perry. So what is a Firefly?
Describe it. Not everybody knows your fancy camera tools.
No. It's a camera, but it does meibomian glands. Now, Perry, for at least 8 years, I've had a keratograph, but it's a nuisance to use a keratograph. You got to take them in the other room and you got to set them up and do all this crap. Well, the Firefly is just a really nice slit lamp with meibomography on it. And so I just take my slit lamp, put it up there, pull down a lid, pow, take a picture. See, it's all about not running all over the damn office. Okay. And so I take an image of their glands of the Firefly. So I take this poor woman's glands. She's 30 years old. Best looking glands I think I've seen in months. But she's got like 2 of them that are gone. She goes, oh my God, I've got glands that are gone. Are you going to shoot the top ones? I said, lady, I just shot the bottom ones. You got all of them, but like 1 or 2. She starts crying in the chair. I'm losing my glands. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? I said, lady, nobody knows if you had those 2 glands last year, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Maybe you didn't. Who knows? I don't know. Did anybody else ever do meibomography on you? She's like, oh, well, no. I said, well, then you don't really know. None of us knows. I said, I see people with no glands that have no dry eye and people with all the glands in the world with dry eye. Another talk for another day. But anyway, so I do that. Then I do the tear lab. Tear lab is the most important test in the office, bar none. I don't care what any of you think. I don't care if Art Epstein thinks it was a number generator. I don't care what you all think. I've been using tear lab for 15 years. Okay, 15 years. So, or 10, whatever. It's a long time. So you can't tell me anything about tear lab when you used it 12 times. And so, I had a lot of arguments with our dearly departed Art about tear lab. And Art would say the following: it doesn't change my treatment paradigm. And I would say, how can that be? How can that be? And he would say, Well, it just doesn't. So I'm going to tell you, they don't have hyperosmolarity. You're going to fight a very, very bad battle. If they have hyperosmolarity, I'm going to say the words, most anything will work. And so when I have people with the stupid normalist osmolarity in the world, those people respond well to IPL, low level light, Restasis, Hydra, magic drops that I sell, but they respond well. But when they have an osmolarity that is not just normal, but superb, we are all in trouble and you just don't know it. Maybe I should shut up. I don't want to run the cold stock.
No.
Anyway, you get the idea. So I do the osmolarity and then I tell them you either have or don't have rosacea. If you have rosacea, and you guys are going to be doing IPL on tons of people without rosacea. So if you have it, I go in and do rosacea treatment. And yes, I use the shields. And yes, I do the lids. And all these people are afraid, oh, I just do Targus to target. No, I do the whole damn face. If the purpose of IPL is to kill Demodex, how are you going to kill it if you're just doing Targus to Targus? Oh, doesn't that sound impressive? Why, Miss Jones, we're going to do Targus to Targus. What's a Targus?
But
ear to
anyways,
ear.
anybody
Sorry.
have, no, Alan, I appreciate the banter. It was an interesting discussion because I don't think many people have LLLT. So
It's unfortunate. It really is. And again, I'm not saying that, in person, but I think they really should look it up. There are published studies on LLT, and I assure you, it acts on the mitochondria of the cell. And
I think what this kind of goes back to is just due diligence. There's not you can't hop on the bandwagon always because everyone's buying it and there's a show special and this alliance group has the deal. And so you actually have to audit financially what works for your practice. If you can't not afford the $100,000 machine, don't buy that. Maybe you need to focus your energy on getting a scribe first who can maximize your workflow efficiency in your office. That would be number one before an IPL, because you're going to need a sophisticated person to show up, do the workup, help you with the treatment, and stick around for 2 or 3 years, because good luck doing dry eye if you have a rotating staff coming through. It's hard.
Well, Perry, what I tell my friends when they want to buy one of these is I say, I'm going to show you how to do this for free. You take a little piece of paper and you put it in your exam room. And every time you talk to a patient about dry eye, you say, Miss Jones, if I were to get a device which would assist you in clearing up your rosacea and decrease your dry eye, would you be willing to pay X? And you can even put a little line on that piece of paper. You don't even have to write Miss Jones's name. And if you don't see any lines at the end of the week, don't buy it.
I see my dad is on here. Ray, you there?
Hey, Ray.
Yeah, I'm out here. How's it going? I just got back from a doctor dinner, so
I think you eat out every night at the doctor dinner, Ray.
Well, at the academy meeting, that's true. I ate out every night. So nice dinner.
Well, Dad, we've been talking about well, let's go back in history. Why did you get Tier Lab a decade ago or more?
Why did I get it?
Yeah.
He thought it was a mistake. I bought all his test kits.
You did. They were expiring. They jammed them down our throat. We had to do something with them, Alan.
I bought them and used them all.
I had 40 boxes of them, and actually, I gave tell the truth, I gave you a Tier Lab unit.
I don't recall you giving me a Tier Lab unit. Oh, yes, you did, because they replaced it, and you had an extra one then.
Yeah, we still need to invoice you on that.
I have 3 of them now, Ray. 3.
Okay.
In any case,
why
did you get Tier Lab a decade ago? What was the importance of that before there was all this other diagnostic equipment?
Well, part of the definition of dry eye dealt with hyperosmolarity, and it's still
Ray, they've never heard that word. Don't say that word. It deals with OptiLight. See?
No, not talking about OptiLight. Talking about tear osmolarity. So tear osmolarity, and it's still part of the latest DEWS definition, has to do with osmolarity. So, but it's tricky because there's other conditions you have to deal with. You can't just do it. It has to be at the right temperature. So it is a little tricky. You have to know what to do. And the thing is, if your tear osmolarity is normal, that doesn't mean that that it's normal. If you have a high osmolarity, then you know you have a person with a problem. But if it's normal, it doesn't necessarily give you that much information.
But Ray, would you not say that when it's normal, if there is a difference between the two eyes, that is as clinically significant as a high?
Yes, so that's characteristic of a dry eye, that you will have a difference between the eyes, but you got to make sure they didn't do drops. And it's the very first test that you do before you shine lights at the people. Because if you shine a light at a dry eye patient, that already could invalidate your tear osmolarity testing. So you actually have to know what to do, how to do it, and under the right circumstances. So, but it's not just one test. We do a dozen tests, and that's one of the tests. And some people like MMP9 testing, and I never really could figure out why, because it wasn't
where's the beef?
Where it wasn't quantifiable. And from a practice management standpoint, you did a lot of work and you made no money on it. So it has to work from a business standpoint. And at some point, I think Dave Kading was they did a study to help quantify it. But as far as I know, there's no quantifiable MMP9 test. And I think the tier lab people were going to do a MMP9 adjunct to it, but that was several years ago. And
I think something is coming out. There's
a new one coming.
No,
Yeah.
it's already been done, Ray. It's been done for years. I mean, I talk to Benjamin Sullivan all the time. And the fact is the device is done, but it's been getting FDA approval through COVID. That's been a mess.
Well,
so the device is made.
It's not out yet. So it's not out yet.
No, I agree with that, but it's not. The problem is MMP9 is only an inflammatory marker, whereas the osmolarity is a true dry eye marker. And MMP9 may be really nice when you get a normal osmolarity and you're looking to see if there's an inflammation characteristic. But as far as the gold standard, it's still the tear lab.
Well, if I see, I could tell inflammation. I just look at the eye, look at the lids, look at the eye, and
that would be the kind of thing that Art would say. That's you really need a number. You wouldn't look at a person and say you have glaucoma. You would do their pressure test and look at their optic nerve.
What words am I out there? I mean, if you look at an eye and it's perfectly white and their lids are perfect, unless they use Lumify, I mean, you could tell inflammation, right, Dr. Pham? I mean,
yeah, I think we're all kind of speaking the same topic and the same subject here. It gets back to the fact that no dry eye patient is the same, and no matter which type of tools and procedure we have access to, it's just practice that literally makes perfect, right? I mean, I cook mainly with just chopsticks. I don't use anything else, and I'm okay with it, right? But some people do a lot of other things, right? And so it's just what we can basically use the tools that we have and just really practice at it and perfect it, right? Like everyone here has been saying, those with the IPL do very well with it. Those with low level light do very well with it. Those with radio frequency do really well with it, because we basically over time have developed all of the nuances that are involved in knowing which tools will work best for which patient, given the tool set we do have. And so I think this is one of the critical parameters here, is just to start something, become very good at it, and then add to the repertoire of the tools there, and not having to jump all in, right? It's really hard to become a great tennis player and do ballet at the same time, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that one of the terms that we've come across a lot is we call it paralysis by analysis, right? There's so many different ways that we can attack a dry eye patient from these different angles, and then we just don't know what to do. And then if you take one or two of these diagnostic tests and just practice over and over again, I think it goes back to kind of Jason's point. I know he's not in front of the camera right now from before. Oh, there he is. Was about when to be able to institute a certain level of treatment. Well, you start to get a feel for that when you start to do the same diagnostic test over and over and over again on these different patients, and you feel for, okay, what number wise generates a mild, moderate, severe in your opinion, and then what symptom wise that goes in it, because you kind of know at that point. You kind of almost developed your own internal algorithm to be able to say, yeah, I have a symptomatic patient, it's coming in with this number, but there's some reason the tear osmolarity says 300 in both eyes. And so, but I know that if I do this treatment, it's still going to be really beneficial for them, even though the osmolarity was right on that borderline as well.
Right.
So it makes a great point. Practice. That's why they call it, right?
Yeah, and it really, at the end of the day, it has to do with just with the knowledge and clinical acumen that we do have, right? Even before the advent of all the CAT scans and MRIs, right? Neurologists could localize the lesion on any stroke with just from an exam, right? And we depend on instruments so much, we kind of lose the art of the exam. And I think it's one thing that we always have to come back to is the art of the exam, is to look at the gestalt of the patient and not just depend on this parameter or that parameter that test says, right? The other thing that I think is really important too, right, is that we often like to go towards tests, but every test has a sensitivity and specificity, right? And we always think, oh, if a test is positive, patient must have this. If the test is negative, they don't have that. Well, that's not really true, right? Because it all gets back to the statistical analysis, right? In any test that we do, we have to make sure that the pre-test probability or prevalence rate basically is high enough in order for the test to become useful, right? If you have a low pre-test probability, let's just say something is like 1 in 1,000, right? No matter which test you apply to, it's probably next to worthless, no matter what the result says, right? Because only 1 out of 1,000 is going to be having that disease. And so your sensitivity has to be basically 100% in order to find that one patient. And the test now has to be accurate 999 out of that 1,000 in order to say that they don't have the disease, right? If that test is not accurate and now we're basically going to start doing workups and treatment on patients that are false positives, right? Because the prevalence rate is so low. And so I think it's one of the reasons why it helps to have that overall view of the patient to know what is the pre-test probability that they have ocularization, that they have MGD, that have Demodex, et cetera, et cetera. What is that pre-test probability? And given that pre-test probability, which test should I apply? Which treatment should I apply in order to get the results that I'm wanting?
Well, Perry, tell them, am I on?
Yeah, you're on. Go ahead, Dad.
Okay. So we did a video of, I did something called the 3 F's of dry eye for people that don't like dry eye: fluorescein, a finger, and a flashlight. And honestly, you could do everything with fluorescein, a finger, and a flashlight. So the fact is, most people don't even have the patient look down to look at their lashes, and right now, new company Tarsus, that's their big theme is, have people look down. So you could really do just about everything. You don't need real fancy equipment, because you could do meibography, just poor man's meibography, by transilluminating the lids. You have to be observant, but you don't need fancy equipment. And I do about a dozen tests, because I tell the patient, once we make a diagnosis, the diagnosis will lead to the treatment. But the people I get, I've often seen 5 or 6 other doctors before. And we have a couple of twin females drive up from Dallas. I said, you passed by 150 other doctors, or maybe more. And they said, no, we saw what you did on a video, and we want to come up. So a lot of people, and no offense, Peter, but a lot of ophthalmologists don't like dry eye. And they just say, yeah, they got a dry eye. I'm going to do a cataract surgery next week. I started them on Restasis a week before. Okay, well, honestly, you want a good outcome, you want good measurements, you really need to fix the dry eye or ocular surface first. So you don't need a lot of equipment, but then you need some better knowledge. So, and there's a journey for the doctor as well as the patient.
Well, I'm going to kind of wrap it up here. It's getting late for all of us here. So Dad, we'll have you back on when you're not eating dinner all the time, apparently.
My car's still in the garage, so okay.
Well, it's a nice sound booth, so you have to stay in there.
Was it good? I'm good in there? Okay.
Yeah. Elon must know what he's doing with the audio.
26 speakers in there, so.
Yeah, well, you can tweet from the car now, probably too. So. Well, anyways, I want to thank everybody for staying on. There's still like 28 people on here, which is quite amazing for tonight. I would just want to know, did everybody find this helpful, motivating, hopefully, versus traditional, formats that we have in the industry? We're going to be doing this another 5 episodes. I don't know if we'll always have the stamina to go 2 hours, but we'll find out. What kind of closing remarks, Aaron, Peter, and Ryan, what can we look forward to for future episodes here and just tonight?
Well, personally, for me, I find this to be extremely exciting and fun that everyone is participating and just giving us their viewpoints on dry eye.
Yeah, I can definitely learned a lot tonight, both, do's and don'ts, but also getting some feedback on how you guys do charge for some screenings, the irrigating the lacrimal sac. I don't think we do that enough, clearly, Dr. Pham. So that's something we need to look at. I don't know what the future, the next episodes are going to be, but I'm sure we'll hash it out and have a good time with it.
Yeah, no, we definitely enjoyed this, and again, thank everybody for coming and being part of it. Obviously, we're here because we love talking dry eye and sharing the knowledge back and forth. What's nice about this environment is it doesn't seem like any topic is off limits. So I know we touched on a little bit of the practice management and practice pricing stuff too. So if that wants to be a focus for some of you guys during a next visit, we'll happily talk about it. If you want to talk more about what treatments are working better than others, we'll talk about it too in more depth and in detail. But it's nice to just be able to get together with colleagues. So, thanks you guys for this opportunity.
So next week, I do have a little planning I've done because we try not to spend our whole life around, doing these planning the Zoom calls. We're going to have Dr. Kerry Salzberg out of Canada. I think he's near Toronto. Shepherd Eye Clinic, I think it is his name. So he has about 8 or 10 optometrists within his facility. Super state of the art. He's got a whole dry eye room. He calls it Aesthetics, beautiful website. And I think Kerry's more the business guy. Optometrist, and then he has a lady female optometrist that is kind of the dry eye guru. And so I think they're going to walk us through their practice model from kind of a revenue standpoint, workflow, how they built their facility out, and things like that. Because I think, Ryan, you mentioned you can have all the fancy equipment, everything, but if you don't show the pony and the pretty shiny cars with the rims, nobody's going to know what you do. So
exactly
right. 100%. Right.
Anyways, thanks everybody. Signing off here. Have a great evening here.
Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.